Go.
All right. So good morning, everyone who's here and anybody who's watching us online this morning. Um, this morning we are talking about the 12 powers, and we won't not going to talk about all 12 of them today. But as many of you know, I'm taking classes at Unity Worldwide, and the 12 Powers was one of the classes that I recently took, and it's interesting always. It never ceases to amaze me in Unity how you can hear something over and over again, and each time you hear it, you take something different away from it, and you hear a different message within that information. And so I just thought good time to review some of the basics of Unity teachings. And so we're going to talk about the 12 powers. I did think it's interesting when you're taking classes at UWSI, they throw in a lot of like history of things and how did this make it in to the Unity movement. And it's just interesting because I think coming into Unity at first, like the 12 powers of man, you see that Charles Fillmore has the 12 powers of man book and all of these things. And it kind of seemed like this was Charles's interpretation of things. And then when you dig into the history, you find out, no, there was other people that like had these thoughts and he kind of solidified it. He did put it into a writing and he really grabbed onto these concepts, but so much of it was passed down from teachers before him as well. And so I just find that really interesting. For some people that were teaching before, there were 7 powers and then some had expanded it to 12, and so it's just interesting. But it's all how we interpret those universal laws of divine nature. And so we know, you guys can't see what I'm saying, but so the 12 powers, we have faith, strength, wisdom, love, dominion, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, release, and life. And so in this book, Power Up, is Paul Hasselbeck and Cher Holton. And they really took kind of looking at the 12 powers. It's called Power Up. And they've got some activities in there for how you can expand each power or ways that you might do some introspection or self-reflection. I brought the book with me. It's this little book here. And so they start talking about that the 12 powers, so we have 4 levels of consciousness with how we work through these. And so we can have unconscious or automatic power. So that's all the stuff that's happening, what it's always, when we're not thinking about what we're thinking about. That's the way to put it. So it's the stuff when we're just allowing our subconscious thoughts and beliefs to kind of run in the background. And so that's our unconscious use of the powers. Because as we know, the universal laws of the powers, they're always working, whether we're paying attention to them or not, or whether we're consciously using them or not. They're always kind of, when you have a computer, so it's refreshing in the background, constant refresh happening from your subconscious up into your conscious, whether you're paying attention to it or not. It's just going on. And then we have conscious, which is through our senses. So we start to become aware of how the powers work in our life through our 5 senses. So the things we can see, hear, taste, smell, touch, we start to pay attention to those things. And then consciously through our personality or ego. And so that's when we start to play around with, what are things that I actually desire to happen, and can I consciously start to use these laws and things that I know will work around me. And then you have the conscious through your higher self. So that's where you're conscious of the ability, you're conscious of how you're using it and putting it into work within your day-to-day life. And it's coming from an intention of being centered in Christ consciousness. And how can I be as connected in that Christ consciousness as possible? So the first one if we just start going through some of them, is faith. And so faith is our ability to believe, to spiritually intuit, to perceive, to hear, and to have conviction. And so one thing I like with this Power Up book is it kind of breaks it down into what does that look like from those different levels of consciousness. And so it says from our ego or personality, this is our ability, it's based on our senses, thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And from this level, we use faith to believe in the law of the land or to believe that our fears are real. That's something that can happen when we're coming from that place. And then they also, it goes through each one and it talks about if we have overdeveloped faith or underdeveloped faith. What does that look like? And I found that really interesting too. And so according to our authors, and I think most of you know Paul Hasselbeck is kind of one of the Unity ministers and scholars of our time that was really dug into metaphysics. Like that's his jam, like that. He really he likes to teach the metaphysics classes. He's one of my instructors recently said, if you want to talk to one of the best metaphysicians I've ever met in my life, you want to talk to Paul Hasselbeck. So he's just going to give you the Unity history and the names there. So he says that in underdeveloped faith, that's when we see distrust, doubt, skepticism, suspicion, and possibly an overall inability to believe or to believe in anything. So just a real hesitancy to have any kind of belief that that you know how anything's going to turn out, or that you can trust anybody or anything in your life is an underdeveloped sense of faith. Yeah, Wendy.
This is just a different way to look at that helped me is I recognize that every single one of us are people of faith, 100% people of faith. The only question is, what have I put my faith in?
Ooh, nice.
And that helped me to begin to change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that goes right in with what they were talking about. He then talks about an overdeveloped faith can result, which I found this really interesting, but it makes sense, that an overdeveloped sense of faith can result in being narrow-minded, dogmatic, or unquestioned loyalty. Because overdeveloped faith is, I put my faith in this thing, and I cannot see any other viewpoint other than what I have put my faith in, because that would shatter my whole system of thinking. And so, but I never thought of that kind of consciousness as an overdeveloped sense of faith. Like I put too much faith into one particular thing and I've made that my entire identity, or I've made that the only thing that can be true and I can't waver from that. But in a sense, like that is faith at its strong, like faith at its strongest. It may not be the healthiest for someone's experience. And then from an elevated consciousness, which is based on ideas, truths, and principle, we use faith to remain connected to our Christ consciousness regardless of outer appearances. So that's where we start to have faith in the laws of the universe and how things work. I also thought it was interesting in faith in particular, they talked about that you could have a blind faith. We've heard that term before. And he describes that as a person who simply trusts that everything is working out for good. So that's a blind faith. Like, oh, everything's working out for good. Everything's working out for me. Yeah, John.
So can you have an overdeveloped faith in the laws of the universe?
That's interesting.
Depends on what you think the laws of the universe are.
Yeah, and I think it does. I think he does address that. Yes, because what he says is you then become so attached to. So, like, if you have an overdeveloped sense of faith in meditation as your tool, he talks about that you could then become dogmatic about your meditation and feel that you must do it. So it has to be this time of day. I have to be sitting in this spot. I have to, you become dogmatic in how you meditate instead of realizing that it's about the energy flow and however that you don't have to be sitting in the same spot every day. It doesn't have to be exactly 15 minutes. It doesn't, all of the things. So that's how the authors talk about an overdeveloped sense of faith in. So it says you start to create dogma around the universal laws, and then they get a little wonky because you're trying to control them in a different way, or you're putting expectation. Yeah, Jerry.
All it is, if it's all it is, and there's nothing else, then all we have to do is just believe out of belief and choose to do what we choose to do, because it's all going to work out. There is nothing that is not Him.
Well, and that's where, let me talk about this blind faith versus understanding faith, because I found that really interesting. So they talk about the blind faith is just the trust that everything's going to work out for good, and just, it kind of stops there, just like, oh, everything's working out for good. And so the example they gave is that, and they said that within that blind faith, sometimes there's an abdication of responsibility, because it's just the belief that God or the universe or spirit or whatever we want to name that is going to somehow intervene and make it good. And so the example they gave is, so a person sees something that they really want and they decide not to buy it, or they don't get it right in that moment, and they just say something like, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's supposed to be mine, it'll be mine. And this is not to say that this is, remember, we're being judgment on this, but it's bad. But what the authors say is, like, that's a faith that says, oh, well, the God or the universe will decide what's right for me and will decide what I'm allowed to receive. That sometimes people get stuck in, like, because we have our old programming, that when it's just faith like that. So, like, flipping it to an understanding faith, which I think, Jerry, like, because I know you, it's coming from both directions. So the understanding faith is a person takes more personal responsibility for the understanding and application of the divine ideas, truths, principles, and laws. And so that person is a person who sees something that they really want, and they begin to consciously use the divine laws and principles to bring it into their experience. And so it's kind of it made me think, I think Sue in a talk one time said, you can't just sit in your living room every day and meditate on, I want a red Lamborghini. And, like, maybe it'll show up in your driveway, but probably, like, the chances are not super high unless there was already something working towards that. But if you say, ooh, a red Lamborghini is the car I want, and you really you understand the laws, and you start thinking, okay, so I know these laws and I understand how the universe works. What can I be putting into my energy? What can I be putting into my experience that is bringing that red Lamborghini closer and closer to me at every moment of every day? And so I thought that was really interesting. And they talk about that we can be in different stages of faith in different parts of our life, right? So one of their examples was, if you plant an apple seed, do you believe that you're going to grow an apple tree? Is that what you're expecting? You plant an apple seed and you expect that it's going to grow an apple tree. But if you visualize an abundant flow of divine substance, do you then believe that it's going to manifest in your life, in your experience, in your immediate future? Like, some people would very much have faith in the apple tree and not as easily have faith in the idea of divine substance surrounding us at all times, and us being able to call that into our lives. I see lots of eyebrows for those thoughts happening. Yeah, Jerry.
Well, one of the issues that I see in wanting the red Lamborghini, and maybe this kind of leads to that, do I need in my own development, in a more whole position in this world of red Lamborghini? Or will it just be something else that I'm not happy with 2 weeks later? And that I'm just again trying to find something else to fill that hole.
Maybe, but if we truly, like, in understanding the laws of the universe, there's no judgment. A principle doesn't have judgment of what's good or bad for you. It only knows, oh, I'm going to get in harmony with the energy of what you're desiring. Yeah.
So, the way I look at it is that I utilize the God power within me from my vibrational stance. And so when you're talking about wanting an individual thing, there you can have 100 people wanting a red Lamborghini, and one of them can be absolutely in alignment with that and their joy of having that. You can have another person that feels like they never have enough and they have to have that to fill a hole. You can have another person that wants a red Lamborghini so that they can con people. They can look powerful and con people. It's the energy that is always going to be determining the outcome of it. But we can, when our energy is clear and our vibration is clear, there's nothing we can't want, and we can sit in our living room and meditate and it will show up, because I cannot tell you the hundreds, if not in the thousands of times I've just said, universe, send me this, and they do.
Yes. And so that kind of goes back to, like, when we're coming at faith from our elevated consciousness, we are in alignment with our true self. And so that's the most powerful vibration in the universe, is when we're in alignment with our true self and we're harmonizing with what will elevate our consciousness even further. Yeah.
I was watching Mary Morrissey master course for dream builders yesterday, and she showed a chart, and she said when you get your energy to 500 something or other, she had this chart that showed, it was kind of like Abraham's chart of emotions, but 500 was the love vibration, and then there were a couple above it. I think I have a picture of it, but anyway, she said that to manifest, you need to be at that love feeling, and that's part of what her program deals with, is feeling that would be love. And I thought it was really cool because she said, when you think about dreaming and you think about something you want, does that invoke a feeling of love in you that raises your vibration to that level where when you put yourself in that dream of having something, you feel that intense love? And I was like, that's kind of a cool key. Mm-hmm. So that would, and Abraham says, you have to elevate your vibration, but to have that as a goal, I thought was, possibly a real game changer. So that's the vibration that we would be looking for to be able to manifest.
Yeah, and this is where I always think it's interesting talking about the 12 powers, because none of them just work independently, right? So they're all parts of us that are working together. I thought it's interesting in this book, and I've seen it in other places, but like some people have little equations. It's like this power plus this power equals this, and this power plus this power. I always find that really, I didn't put any of those in here, but I can't remember. I'm trying to think of one. But anyway, but there are some like little things that, like, when you can mesh these two things together, that's what we usually describe as courage, or or whatever. So it's all, none of these are working in a silo. So yeah, like you put faith and love together, ooh, that gets even more powerful than just one of them on their own. Let's move into strength. So strength is our ability to endure, to stay the course, to last, be persistent, persevere, and be stable. And they say strength is resilience, not force. And so from our unconscious, if we're in our unconscious state, that could come out as stubbornness or rigidity, because we're not truly paying attention to what we're doing with that strength. And again, it's based on our senses, feelings, and beliefs. So we could use strength to stick to a workout program, or we could use strength to be really stubborn and dig our heels in and not compromise with someone. We also, in that ego spot, or less, not coming from our higher self-consciousness, that's where we sometimes try to use our power of strength to force outcomes or control the how of things. If we look at that underdeveloped, so they say underdeveloped strength shows up as an inability to stick with a project or goal. This might be a person who goes from one unfinished project to another. Does anyone else feel convicted by hearing that? So I thought that was interesting that would be seen as an underdeveloped strength, because it's that perseverance part. It's that like stick to it to the end part. And so if we're not experiencing a strong and balanced power of strength, we just might not get anything finished. An overdeveloped sense of strength or unbalanced could also show up as being stubborn, forceful, maybe even obsessive. So they talked about like, this is the person that will forge ahead with a plan, even when all circumstances and all wise voices around them are saying, like, it's clearly not going to work. It's just, we need to change the plan. And they're like, nope, this is the plan I started with. This is the plan I'm going to end with. And so that can be an overdeveloped sense of strength, where we kind of block out everything else and get that tunnel vision of what we're doing. And then from elevated consciousness, which is back to truth of principle, we use it to be persistent in connecting with our Christ consciousness. So that's where we, set a meditation schedule and actually stick with it, or we pay attention to our thoughts and pause. We have the perseverance to pause and reframe a thought when we go, oh, wait a minute, that's not in alignment with my true self. I need to pause and do my work. And so from our higher self, we might hear things like, that's perseverance, courage, or inner fortitude. Does anybody have any thoughts on strength?
Just what you said, what comes to mind, I just watched the video the other day about the best engines for pickup trucks and the worst engines. And in the late 90s, over 2000s, Ford was pressuring Navistar to come out with a more fuel efficient engine to meet EPA standards. And they come out with a 6.0 and a 6.4 liter, and they was total disasters and made a lot of customers unhappy. They paid out billions of dollars in warranty claims, and it boils down to they was headstrong about coming out with something quick and a quick fix to a long-term problem, and they had a tremendously bad experience.
Yeah. So how many of us have that happen when we try to force the outcome or control the how? We end up down a windy path that we never intended to be down because we got a little off track with our centered self, which is all part of the is all part of the journey, and it doesn't make it bad. It's just that having the awareness of it. Yeah, John.
So to me, it seems part of it's the focus. Are you focusing just on the material world? Are you focused on more subtle energies? And using that, especially on all the 12 powers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's the focus? And that transition between manifesting in the three-dimensional reality versus where's your focus in order to experience the joy and that good feeling that one gets when you're in alignment.
Yeah, and so if they talk about how Charles, he liked to talk about the 12 powers that, like these 12 powers are, I guess, harmonies. Like these are universal. They're happening in universal law. But as for us, as 12 powers of man, is that we can connect to that Christ consciousness and those powers of the different aspects of the universe. And so it's, when you were saying that, it was making me think of like, are we focusing on just our human experience, or are we focusing on the universal oneness experience? Could be kind of the same thing as what you're saying. It's like, where's that focus? And I think that's what this book is trying to say, is when we're in that higher level consciousness for any power, we are connecting to the bigger oneness of the universe and the interconnectedness of it all. Yeah.
Well, Bouchard calls it our passion and our excitement. Is if we follow our passion and we're excited every day when we wake up, we're going to find that what was a 3-hour morning was a 10-minute time span. That we're all of a sudden, wow, I've been at this for 3 hours. And so that's when we know we are following our excitement.
Did you do Zeal?
I didn't do Zeal today,
Oh.
But we will do Zeal eventually. The next one I have for today is wisdom. And so wisdom is our ability to judge, evaluate, discern, be wise, appraise, and apply what is known. And so this, they said, wisdom balances the intellect with spiritual discernment. When we're doing this consciously, that's where we may see snap judgments. And so from our ego, again, we're using, it's based on our senses and beliefs. So we might use judgment to choose what we're eating today. We might use it to choose what we're wearing. We might also use it to be judgmental, discriminatory, or shrewd. Shrewd, if that's a word you don't hear very often. So in talking about that underdeveloped, overdeveloped, so an underdeveloped judgment, they said this could result in a person who can't make decisions, is really indecisive, may not be able to discern good for them or bad for them, which you have to put the judgment on there, but something that's in alignment, out of alignment, we don't like to use those words. And they had a funny little passage in there about if you want to see what underdeveloped judgment looks like, I said usually find like a group of friends and say, hey, let's all go to lunch today. Where do you want to go? And you'll see lots of different levels of discernment. And there you'll have, I don't know, where do you want to go? I don't know, where do you want to go? I don't know, what sounds good to you? Like all that indecisive decision making. And then an overdeveloped sense of judgment is could be someone who's highly judgmental, discriminatory, even racist or sexist. They might be overly picky about all of the details and then always able to find fault no matter what the result is. And then from our elevated consciousness, judgment is used to discern how to apply what we know in order to connect with our Christ consciousness. And so higher self would be true discernment. Sometimes this is called judgment, so I used wisdom here. There's also, they use the terms discernment or evaluation or appraisal. If you don't like either of those words, yeah, here.
ACIM says it's reason. If you reasonably look at things and make a decision from there
Yeah. So
without judgment.
Yeah.
So I've been seeing some patterns. And yesterday, one of the patterns I saw is I am constantly looking at things, and I never really thought of it as judgment, but yesterday it was like, oh my gosh. And I got thinking about it. My mom constantly made judgments about people all the time and about everything. And I'm sure that she learned it from her mom. And it's like, things like people who wear jewelry show that they have a level of wealth. Because if you're in poverty, you can't afford jewelry. You're putting food on the table. So jewelry is a sign of affluence to a point. And this is just a really minor thing. But if you look at me, you realize how much that's affected me because, I mean, and my jewelry is organized. I can find it. But I get really stressed if I go out of the house and I realize I don't have earrings on. I've actually stopped at garage sales and bought earrings because I can't be out without them. And I just realized this week how much so many of the things that my mom programmed me to feel and believe that I react to. And I grew up in a state where my mom considered these people to be really backward. And so there was always this running conversation, and she didn't really intend it to be critical, but oh my gosh. And this week I've just been hearing those voices in my head going, where'd that come? Oh, that was mom. And you don't have any idea. The four spiritual laws calls it domestication. You know, this is the way our culture does this. And we don't even have such an idea until we begin to wake up and look at our own thoughts and see where they came from. And so I'm like, yeah, I see this at play in not so good a way.
Yeah. Well, and they talk about in here that we are, they actually say we are judgment-making machines. And part of that is the survival thing, right? So, like, we have to make judgments on things. Like, I have to discern, in our history as a hunter-gatherer, someone had to discern, is this a berry that will feed me and my people, or is this a berry that will kill me and my people if I take it back to camp? So we had to make judgments about things. We had to discern. We had to use our wisdom. But because it is tied to some of that survival energy, they talk about then it has run rampant. And as we have a society where we don't so much have to work, we don't have to discern on a daily basis whether or not our food is safe to eat. Or whether or not a wild animal is going to attack us in our sleep, or we don't have to have all that same kind of survival energy. And so we, as these creatures, these human creatures, we start feeding that energy into other things. And so then we start making judgments about jewelry because I don't need to make a judgment about a jaguar today, whether or not it's going to come eat me. Yeah.
And if you are experiencing some reason that you're in this survival mode, then the judgment just amps up. So if for any kind of traumatic memories, anything like that, will just jack up that judgment, and you don't really realize it. It's just happening.
Brenda, did you have something? Thank you, Jerry, for being on the Thank you for.
One thing that comes to my mind is the poke greens, the purple berries, them is very toxic and poisonous, but you can take the poke and boil it down and cook it, and it's healthy, but the berries is toxic and poisonous. And a lot of people think, what, the berries is poisonous, then the whole plant's got to be poisonous, but it's not. Just that one part of it is.
I know, and I always wonder with things like that, who was the first person to discern that, okay, so we ate the berries and those made us terribly ill, but maybe we can cook the plant and we'll be fine. Like, who was the first person that got that message, and what did those around them say? You can be the first to try it. Go ahead.
It was Mikey. You can feed Mikey anything.
No, it was Joanna Polk.
Joanna, there you go.
I did some of the things like that I think, who was the first person? Who was the first, and some of it came out of desperation of just, we need something, we got to try something new. But there's some of those older recipes or things that were used that I just have to scratch my head and think, who was the first person that got the download that, like, if you mix these two things together, it's going to taste wonderful. And that they
Poke makes you very sick if you eat the leaves raw.
Yeah.
It has to be boiled and dumped and rinsed and again. So you still have to be careful with it. But and I just actually looked that up, and it was Hawaiian. The Hawaiians decided that. But you can eat the way that they teach you in the wilderness is you can eat, you put something in your mouth and chew it, and then you spit it out, and you feel in your body. And you can eat a very small amount of almost anything, and it won't kill you. But you test it, and that's how you do that, which I always wondered how you did that. Yeah. But you eat just you put it in your mouth first and then spit it out. And then you taste a little tiny bit of it, and you see how your body reacts. That's how they did that. And it's not such a big mystery as I thought it was.
Yeah, I just think that's a whole different level of discernment than most of us are dealing with on our regular day-to-day lives in today's society, right? I go to the grocery store and I purchase something, and I just have faith that it is safe for me to eat if it's being sold at a grocery store. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not gonna keel over. But yeah,
all these recalls lately.
Getting all dicey. Yeah, Dan. Good to see you.
Yeah, I had a very good friend, a lady in China who sold tea, had a tea shop, and she had studied very extensively the ancient medicinal value of tea. And she always said that it was the ability to discern the qualitative and quantitative value of a particular type of leaf that they would dissolve, of course, into water and make a tea out of. But a lot of the ancient shaman women who were into medicinal value of tea would always look to what was the most life-saving in the case of something that was harmful. And tea was always the first way in which they would look to determine different types of tea that serve different parts of your body as a medicinal use. So it was, as she was saying, the how they determined that, and it wasn't an immediate thing. It was something that was done over hundreds of years, and what was passed down from mother to daughter to mother to daughter over many generations, and the institutional memory that they gained on the value of tea. And you see that today in the use of tea, much more prevalent
Yeah.
than what we do here.
Yeah. Awesome. Lindy?
So I see all this a little differently, and there is no part of it that is lesser and part that's higher in any of this. They're just places that we're in our creative endeavors. And so wisdom is an interesting thing because the use of understanding how something like, they're talking about herbs or food or, and that at one level, that wisdom is a very important wisdom and necessary to use. And then you get into other levels where it's not so necessary. I can't remember the name of the book, but I think it's Dan Millman's book. But anyway, there's the guy who's being trained by the guru, and you can't drink, and you can't do this, and you can't do. And then there's a time when the student walks in, and the guru is drinking a drink and smoking a cigar, and he's like, "You told me that's bad." And he goes, "Yeah, for you right now, where you are, but not for me." And so wisdom, like any of it, changes over time. The facts, just want the facts change. And when we begin to recognize that as we move through this incredible journey, that the wisdom is to be able to understand when the facts have changed, and it's time to do something different and use a different set of wisdom facts.
Yeah, and it talks about from our elevated consciousness that we're discerning how to apply what we know. So once we start to know and understand the laws of the universe and how powerful we truly are as co-creators and all of that, then we start to use that judgment to discern, okay, no matter what's going on in my external circumstances, like how do I apply what I know to be true to this situation? And that kind of changes the whole game of what we're doing, because we're not it's not how do I live until tomorrow, how do I survive this day, it's how do I become the Christ consciousness embodied in this human form. Did you have something to say?
I'm Erin.
Hi, Erin.
You have to hold the mic close
Oh, thank you.
for the TV people.
I liked that you brought up the idea of having a non-judgmental attitude and practicing some of those, spiritual concepts. Oh, sorry. This is my first day here, so
Well, we're so
we'll
glad
get
you're
used to
here.
it.
We're so glad you're here, and we're going to yell at you about a microphone.
I don't know
but
that
we would love to hear what you're saying.
Spoken
so please.
into a microphone ever, so
Have to eat it all.
okay. I always think about, okay, can you hear me? I always think about people who do muscle testing, if you guys have ever heard of that. And how they'll just kind of place a label or place an object on someone and they'll test their muscles to see if maybe there's a response, to see if, they have an allergic reaction or if it's healthy or not. And I think that if our systems maybe are that sensitive, or we can begin to maybe ask ourselves those questions and tune into how we do respond, over time you develop those sensitivities, and the non-judgmental attitude and empathy, maybe having that respect or reverence for other people, not having that filter judgment, I think you're much more receptive to that exchange of information, whether or not it's, a cyber tooth bear or, somebody that is a very kind person or something that you might have a reaction to. So that Christ consciousness, that loving kindness that we talk about so often, I think it helps you to just have that clear, receptive attitude or energy that helps you to then discern much easier. So I just find that pretty neat.
Thank you. That it comes to the question that I have written down here next is like, so then how do we discern between judgment that's coming from our personality or ego consciousness or humanness, however you want to term that as a non-negative, and what is true wisdom emerging from elevated consciousness? And that's kind of what you're talking about, is what you have to develop that skill of paying attention and understanding when it's coming from that place. Yeah, Don.
I think we need to be aware of the words of Jesus, who said, "Judge not, lest you be judged." And so that the difference between judgment of another person and the judgment of whether you should turn left or right is totally different subject.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be aware of the fact that what he was talking about was the fact that we are all children of God and that we should see each other as our higher self.
Yeah, good point. Oh, Carrie, you have one.
I had a question or I had an experience yesterday where contrast was brought to my awareness about something about myself and old beliefs and things, and so I know that's like wisdom, right? Like I needed that contrast to bring that to my awareness, and it was painful because I was in shame about it and I was judging myself about it. And so like today's a new day, I feel great, I'm thankful for the contrast, but I know I need to be in this state to be able to do something about it. So what are some practical ways of surrendering that in that process of, I don't know, ego deaths and old beliefs and trying to stay out of shame about it, I guess?
I mean, personally, I would say it like the first, if we're not judging others and being in judgment, like that starts with not judging yourself for those things. And that's why we talk a lot about, so I've said so many times, like, it's not good or bad, it just is. This is like part of the path. One of the things that I recently heard from Stephen Levine, he was talking, it was an old video, but he was talking about like pain and sometimes that pain, like the shame and all of that. And he said what we have a tendency to do is want to judge it or run away from it. And he believes that the only way to move through it is to remain soft to it. And the way he described it, I thought was so beautiful. And he said, if that pain or that judgment or that shame, whatever that is, was a small child that you love, how would you address that small child that was hurting, like this pain or judgment is hurting? Would you run away from it? Would you yell at it? Of course not. You would embrace, you would stay soft, you would stay loving. You would probably, we would all quickly move into forgiveness. We would understand, like, oh, this is just a part of your journey, and that's okay. And we understand we have this, this tendency to nurture small beings and small children, especially that we love. We have a tendency to nurture them in such a beautiful way. And he says, like, do that for yourself. Like any part of yourself that is underdeveloped or is developing is like a small child. And don't be mad at it. Don't hate on it. Love it, embrace it, and say, it's okay. This is where we are today, and we're learning big lessons, and we're moving forward, and now we know. And so that's what I would say.
So if take it, for me, I have to take it away from the situation. It isn't about the situation. Take it back to energy. And the only question I have to ask myself is, do I still want to continue to play in this energy? I want to play here. And those are times like when I had to put on my wall to take offense is the same energy as to give offense. They're not wrong, they're not bad, they're anything. It's just the question, do I still want to play there?
Another take on that is to, while you're sitting with the uncomfortable emotion, what would feel better? And how, and where do you choose to move from where you are?
I agree that when we see something that is a part of us that we really don't like or that we can feel guilty or ashamed of, I always tell myself, when I know better, I do better. And that's where I was then. That's my level of understanding or experience or consciousness or whatever. That's where I was then. And this is where I am now. I want to change that. It's just like I'll be talking about her mother and judgment. Well, I certainly understand that because when I came to Unity, I did not know you weren't supposed to judge other people. And I was in my mid-40s, for God's sake. I was shocked, and I'm so glad I found that out. Yes, it's much more comfortable this way.
Yeah. So I think it's a beautiful transition. The last one I had prepared for today was love. And that's our ability to feel affection for, attract to oneself, to harmonize, and to unify. And so, we talk about love a lot here in Unity. And it says love elevates from possession to compassion and to unity. When we're in our ego selves, we have our desire to love. We can use love to bring good or bad into our lives. Again, using good or bad, we're using judgy terms. But it's based on what we're focused on. And so underdeveloped love can result in someone who has a limited ability to feel affection or positive regard for another person or themselves. It can also result in someone who has little desire for anything. An overdeveloped love results in someone who indiscriminately loves or inappropriately loves, gives affection. It may also show up as like fatal attraction or neediness. And then from our elevated consciousness is when we're, settling into truth and principle, and we are using love to desire Christ's nature so that we're harmonizing with everything in our life to be in alignment with that true self. And so I thought it was interesting. They talk about 3 aspects of the power of love. So our emotion is the ability to feel affection for or desire something, attraction, the ability to attract ourselves towards something, and then harmony, the ability to unify or bring agreement and accord to our thoughts or to a situation. And so this is kind of where I was talking about earlier. So I typed out this whole passage because they said, if love or harmony is a principle, then it does not care how it is used. Love is a principle that brings 2 or more things into harmony with each other. And it says nothing of the quality of the things being harmonized. It says nothing about what harmony looks or feels like. So when we are focusing on a negative, we could say that we are loving that negative thing. Where we get terms like misery loves company. The principle simply harmonizes thoughts and feelings to match the negative that we are focusing on. And our outer circumstances then have a tendency to harmonize with the same negative focus. And so that just really, like, thinking about that in that way, because I think that's one of the hard things when coming into metaphysics, and you have all the great, like, why do bad things happen to good people, and why do these things, and people sometimes will get people who are maybe don't have a full understanding. I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but like sometimes there's a little bit of like metaphysical malpractice, so people are like, well, what did you do to it? What were you thinking about to attract that into your life? And I don't know, like this just kind of somehow put this into focus for me that like it's all love. No matter what we're experiencing, it's all love. It's just what were we focused on? Love is just trying to give us what we're focused on. And so if we're not consciously focusing on things that feel good, bring us joy, bring us happiness, bring us into alignment, then we get a whole bunch of other stuff that we didn't really understand that we were loving into existence by focusing on it. So that made any sense. It made sense in my brain. And so it says love as a principle loves indiscriminately. So we have to be vigilant about what we're holding in our consciousness because love is just always like it's just always working. It's one of those things that whatever we're focused on, that energy starts to try to harmonize to pull us closer and closer to those things. Yeah.
One thing that really helped me is that remember the answer is always yes. So be careful what you're choosing.
The universe is always trying to say yes, or the energy universal law is always saying yes, yes, and more, and more.
You know, the thing that just amazes me about all this is that how absolutely real and solid that God love is, that and in every moment how loved and trusted we are to come here and utilize that power and begin to create a story to share with others and to try things out, and that it's so known that we can never lose our true self and we can never damage the process, we can never damage the principle, we can never damage love by creating something that seems less love-like. And to me, that a lot of times is enough to bring me back to it. Is that it's okay if I came and never created one moment what people consider love. I've done something amazing, and I am amazing.
The question I have written was, what shifts when love is accessed and expressed from your higher self? Yeah, everything. Yes.
I think as we move into recognizing and acknowledging our higher self, I forgot where it's going with this. Oh, there are people that are difficult to love, but we can look to the knowing that there is a Christ self inside of that person that is whole, perfect, and complete and loving, and just as the Christ self in us is. So you can always love that part of them, even when they're acting out and not really seem loving.
Well, I mean, it's just different levels of consciousness and different levels of vibration, right? So what just came to mind was like, it takes a lot of different notes to make a song. If we were all playing the same note all the time, it wouldn't be nearly as beautiful as when we, add all the different notes and all the different things to our song. All right, I think we're gonna end there on our powers. The next time, I can't remember what date it is, but I'm just gonna keep going until we get through all 12. So probably do this 3 times if we can get through 4 every time.
I want to know what dominion, which power are they calling dominion? I never heard of dominion.
It is in there. It wasn't one for today, but it was on the list. They don't use a different term other than dominion for that. John, would you mind handing me those announcements, or do you want to do them either way? All right. So our announcements today. This evening and every Sunday at 6 o'clock, we have the peaceful group meditation session. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just starting out, all are welcome. The next Prosperity and Growth Team meeting is tomorrow, August 18th at 6 p.m. Everyone is welcome to attend. If you're looking for a meaningful way to give back, you can come be part of the Map Makers group. Beginning August 21st, the Map Makers meet every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. and create sleeping mats to provide a barrier for the cold, wet ground for people experiencing homelessness. The Unity Drum Circle is the first and third Thursday each month. Join us this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. No experience necessary. Bring your own drum if you have one. If not, there's extras here at the church. For our celebration service next Sunday, we will have Marlene Bricker back with us, and she is bringing a wealth of speaking and teaching experience, having served as an elementary school teacher, author, business owner, and spiritual director of a Unity church. We will also, in the New Thought and World Religion class, it'll be next week is part 2. See, this is how I have not looked this far into my calendar. So next week, we're going to do part 2 on Power Up. I got my calendar mixed up. I thought we had a couple weeks in between.
Marlene's top title is Holy Shift.
Oh, okay. I gotta carefully say that.
Yeah.
Marlene's talk title is Holy Shift. Shift with an F in there. Our Community Through Music outdoor concert is Saturday, August 30th at 7 p.m. We're gonna join Lane Wagner, Patrick Marithi, and Karina Jane. You want to bring a chair and a friend and come enjoy the music. It's so nice out there. Hot dogs, chips, and soda are available for purchase. And I heard John remind someone the other day, you're sitting in the grass, you might want to bring some bug repellent. We're accepting donations for our next yard sale, which is scheduled for September 12th and 13th. The only thing they're not accepting is electronics and large furniture items. You can bring your donations to the church during office hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4, and on Sunday mornings. Our Friendship Sunday potluck is usually the first Sunday of each month, but we will be setting up for the yard sale. So the potluck will be the Sunday before on August 31st. We need a few volunteers for cleanup, and everybody needs to bring something yummy to share. Dee and Lisa have cleaned out the bookstore and sorted through all the books. There are shelves of books just outside the sanctuary doors that you can take home with you today. They are not priced, but we will, of course, accept a love offering. And we'll be adding several new books to our lending library inside Fellowship Hall. There isn't a checkout process, just kind of like the little free libraries. Take a book, leave a book as you are on your journey. And that's right back there. There's a sign hanging from the ceiling, but most people don't notice it. All right. Thank you all. We are complete for this morning. If you want to circle up in the back, we will do so.